Welcome to episode 48 of the Plug in Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and this is your checkpoint for video game news, reviews, and hot takes that nobody asked for. And happy Thanksgiving. Why not? This should be going up around the time that you're eating turkey, driving to the in-laws, if those exist in your life, and so on and so forth. We've got a packed show for you, lot that's happened over the past couple of weeks, including a Japan presentation by Sony showing off their partnered games. We have going through all the games that were announced in that particular presentation, along with a Microsoft Xbox partner showcase. We'll see if that was good, bad, or in between. And of course, the Game Awards. Oh, my favorite time of the year. We're going to go through all the nominations. We're going to see who made the cut, who didn't, who we think's going to win. What are the odds that Expedition 33 is going to win Game of the Year? I don't know. Could be any high probability. And then, of course, Valve has also announced Steam hardware. We have the nice new Steam home console, VR headset, and controller we'll be talking about, as well as impressions. Been going through a lot of smaller games recently. The developers from Arctic Awakening sent me a code. We'll be going through that. Thank you very much for that, sir and madam. We have Death Come True, the first individual developed game from the creator of Danganronpa. And we have, Pepper Grinder, the somehow forgotten platformer from Devolver Digital that I went through. We'll be giving our thoughts on that at the end of the episode. So, before we get into all the juicy stuff, let's get rid of the housekeeping, shall we? I like a clean house. So, starting off, you can be a part of the show. You can do it by emailing me at pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com. Be a part of the show. I'll read it out. I'm a nice guy. I'll give you all the benefit of the doubt with however you word your question. I will ignore all grammar mistakes and punctuation. Do not worry. Give us a like. Give us a follow. Give us a subscribe. I can say all of those things now because we are on Twitter or X, whatever you prefer, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at pluginplaypod1. I appreciate all support. We have timestamps in the bottom as well. It's a labor of love. If you like what I'm saying, you can go right to it. If you don't like it, you can skip right past it. I really need to try and order those in a more succinct way. But we were just talking about commenting, liking, and subscribing. Actually getting a lot of engagement on my posts recently. Very happy about that. Unfortunately, I wish we were getting more engagement in terms of actual gaming conversation. I am getting a lot of people saying that I am an AI and that I suck because I am an AI. Little do they know, the algorithm doesn't care. Engagement is engagement. But I do not do this for engagement, okay? I mean, sure, if nobody engaged, I wouldn't do it. I mean, it would be pointless at that point, right? If nobody's listening. If a tree falls in the middle of the forest and no one's there to hear it, if a gamer screams about video games on the internet and nobody clicks, did he even scream about video games? It's a lifelong question we've all asked. And in this particular instance, I would much prefer people talk to me about video games. Like that was like the big. That's why I started doing this. It's like I don't want to bother people in my real life about talking about video games all the time because they would probably not be in my real life anymore. They would go away. So I have started doing it on the internet where I say there's millions of people on the internet. At least one of them wants to talk about video games with me, but none of them do. They just want to say that I look like AI, and that's fine because I'm using AI. But it's not what I'm wanting in terms of engagement. It's very frustrating. But anyway, you're not supposed to say that on the internet because then people just keep doing it. But again, I still get more engagement because people are engaging even if they're just saying AI, but whatever. I've started going through my comments and I like to read my favorite comment. Whatever the case is, this is the comment corner. And in this case, our comment of the episode goes to, from our YouTube shorts, not_in_murder drone on YouTube. He says, just go to the gym, bro. I know it's AI, but still, though. And I really do want to give him a shout out because I do believe that physical health is important. I think as gamers, we all forget that. And we do need to make that a priority in our lives. If you haven't gotten your steps in today, highly encourage you to do so. New Year's is coming up. Make that a New Year's resolution. Go to get a Gold's Gym membership. Like whatever you got to do, brother. But I think Mr. Not in Murder Drone is right. We do all just need to go to the gym, bro. So thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your comments, sir. Anyone else out there want to do that? We can start a gym club, accountability gym podcast. That's what we can do. But that's a different topic for a different day. Because honestly, we have a lot of topics, like a whole lot of topics. So the past couple of weeks have been filled with presentations, one a week from Sony and Microsoft. A lot of just stuff coming out. Obviously, that's because, it's the holiday season. We're trying to get our Q4 announcements out there and releases so that, we can be ready for the holidays. In this case, Sony had a Japan presentation that focused mainly on Japanese developers and games. We're going to go through each one of them, and we're going to talk about them. A lot of them are not for us, and by us I mean people who aren't in Japan. They are definitely geared towards a Japanese audience, so I don't have a lot to say about some of them. But I think it's worth mentioning. I think these presentations, I don't even know if I want to give this one like a letter grade. I typically do, like A, B, C, or D or whatever. But like this is, a lot of these presentations have just kind of turned into marketing. And I know they always are, right? They're just showing trailers, right? I mean, I know that. But it feels like it's almost obligated. Like, I feel like Sony is doing these presentations because they've signed contracts saying that they have to do them, and not because they're like, we really think this game is going to be a big deal, and we really want to be there supporting it when it releases. Like, I don't see it as that. Like, this isn't really a partnership as much as it is just like a yeah, we said we were going to do this, so we have to. So, anyway, starting off Sony's presentation was a game we've already seen. So Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, coming out, it got a confirmed release date of February 5th, 2026. So, we're pretty much just, this was just showing off it's a release date. We've already seen this shown before. It is not one of the more revered Dragon Quest games, so it's really just kind of a proof of concept in seeing engaging interest in, does this reimagined, quote-unquote, kind of way of going about handling these games work. Obviously, they've done the Dragon Quest HD 1, 2, and 3 remakes now, and those were more so just like HD pixel updates. This is a little bit more of a ground-up remake, and so I guess they're just, they're going to work on this one and then see about doing older ones that are probably a little bit more beloved later if this one does well. Next was Inconbini, One Store Mini Memories. This is a fun little Japanese convenience store game coming out April 2026. It just kind of looks like a slice of life game where you're running a convenience store. If you didn't know, a konbini is like a little convenience store in Japan. I really thought this game looked pretty charming. It's set in the 1990s. You're just kind of setting up chips on shelves and dealing with, customers that come in with various issues or whatnot. It kind of seems like, it seems interesting. I don't even, this seems like a kind of game that may not even be localized. I'm sure it is, but like it seems so niche and so directed at a Japanese audience I would be surprised to see like an English audience or a Western audience really gravitating towards it at all. But hey, why not? Sell a couple dozen copies or whatever over here in America and make a couple bucks. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it would be that big of an issue. But Inconveni, it definitely caught my eye in terms of charm. Coffee Talk Tokyo, releasing March 5th. This is a continuation in the Coffee Talk series. It's an indie game where you essentially make coffee for people and you talk to them, and they're typically supernatural creatures or something like that, and they have very human problems, so it's kind of surreal in that way. I played a little bit of Coffee Talk Chapter 1. There's Coffee Talk Chapter 1 and 2 currently available out there on your platform of choice, and I kind of fell asleep, and I don't know. Coffee Talk stuff is like, coffee in general seems to invoke a vibe of just chill. Coffee shops, baristas, whatever the case may be, just in general. And I just don't seem to gravitate towards those particular kinds of games. Chill, like Stardew Valley or something like that, Animal Crossing, kind of those chill slice of life games. Like, I just don't really gravitate towards them. I'd need a little bit more to keep me hooked and keep me interested, and Coffee Talk just didn't do that, at least within the short time that I gave it. So definitely not interested in Coffee Talk Tokyo. Then Broken Lore Unfollow and Broken Lore Ascend. This is apparently a series that I've never heard of, and apparently not many other people outside of Japan have heard of. Basically just a first-person horror series. One is you are kind of exploring social media. That's obviously Unfollow. I'm sure there's like a demon that comes out of your computer or something. And Ascend, you are climbing Tokyo Tower, and there is a ghost haunting it. Ooh. I guess this is a popular series if it made it to PlayStation Showcase, and it has 2 new games that were announced and is part of a continuing series. I don't know anything about it, so can't say much. But I can say a little bit more about Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly Remake. Fatal Frame is one of the games that I originally started watching people play a very long time ago. 4Player Podcast, one of the original big Twitch streamers at the time, they played Fatal Frame a good bit, specifically Fatal Frame 2, and dang, that game is known for being pretty freaking scary. You play as like some Japanese schoolgirls going through some haunted Japanese locales, and you specifically can only fight ghosts using a camera. So like it is very, like, it is kind of a genius horror premise, because like the ghosts are invisible for the most part unless you pull out your camera and try to take a picture of them, which is how you fight them. And so, you kind of have an idea, like you hear noises or, like the wind or whatever the heck, and, you freak out and you pull up your camera to try to defend yourself, and like the ghost is right in front of you and like you had no idea. And, it leads to a lot of natural jump scare moments within the context of the game. It's a very well-known series. It kind of fell off later into the abyss of like 3 and 4. Like, people really just stopped caring about it. I think they even made something after 4. But they continue to kind of crank those games out at a very slow pace. But 2 is kind of where I think people consider the peak of the series to be. So if you're into like Japanese horror, Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly Remake, I'm genuinely have an eye on it because I have a little bit of a nostalgic connection to it. So maybe I'll get around to it at some point. One thing I don't have a nostalgic connection to that I particularly care about is Dynasty Warriors. Dynasty Warriors Origins had DLC announced. This is going to be a recurring thing here. There's a lot of DLC announced within this particular conference, which who cares? So more DLC for that. Same thing for Gran Turismo 7. Another DLC pack for Gran Turismo 7. Next up was Motion Wreck, which is an indie game about recording your movements, playing them back at different points in the stage. I don't remember much about this one, to be frank, so I'm moving on. Next is Wandering Sword. This apparently came out a while ago on Steam, so it's getting a console port coming May 2026, which kind of is odd. It's taken that long to port the game to console, and that you're announcing it, and it's still like months away. That's interesting, but it's a Chinese martial arts game, so cool. Next is No Sleep for Kaname Date from AI The Somnium Files. I've spoken briefly about AI The Somnium Files on this podcast before. I say it's one of my favorite visual novels ever. I cannot recommend the original enough. I played the sequel as well, and I genuinely can't remember the vast majority of what was in that game. Really did not grab me anywhere as much as the original did, but the original has probably one of the best twists in a visual novel I've ever seen. Really love it. Love the vibe. Love the previous games from that creator. He's the guy who's done 999, several of those survival horror choice-based puzzle games before. But this is the new one, and by the new one, I'm really surprised they keep making games from AI The Somnium Files. I just assume it would probably be a very niche title that isn't selling that much, and this is more of a spin-off. So while the second game was more of a direct sequel, this is kind of a spin-off. It seemed to, by the trailers that I saw, had more of like kind of a comical angle to it. I don't know. It didn't seem like it was really something that anyone else outside of the major hardcore fan base for this particular series would want to play. It is releasing at a budget price, which makes me think even more so that this is like really a game that people, like, only major fans are supposed to play. It's not really a major continuation in the series. It was originally only for the Switch, which is why it's getting announced now for PlayStation. Most Switch exclusives typically eventually make their way to PlayStation, so unless you're in some big rush, might as well just wait. But anyway, it's February 26th. If you're very interested, you can get it at a nice discount price of $50 USD. I'll wait for a price drop on this. I really just was not super into the sequel, and am hoping for, if I go into this, it has something there. I really just don't think the second game had much there to really draw me any further. It was clear that the first game was like, this is a real idea that we had that was good, and we didn't have much else planned after that, and now we're done, and now but now it was such a success, we need to continue making another one, kind of deal. So anyway, I've rambled enough about it, but yeah, that's my thoughts on that particular franchise, at least in a nutshell. Tokyo Extreme Racer. Would you believe it's a game about racing in Tokyo? Next, Once Upon a Katamari is getting 2 DLC packs. Specifically, from what I can tell, it's just for music. It's just adding tracks to the game. Now, Katamari Damacy is known for having really good music, and I mean, like, I love a lot of the tracks. They're iconic gaming tracks, just so weird and off the wall, but still so catchy and mesmerizing in a way, that when they started playing some of them in the trailer, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that jam, like that kind of deal. So it's cool. It's cool to see these coming. It's weird that it's just the tracks. I would love to see like more levels or something like that. But maybe they do come with levels. From what I could tell, it was just musical tracks. So next, Pac-Man 2 Repack is getting Sonic the Hedgehog DLC. This is nothing new. It was already announced. Next, Digimon Time Stranger Episode 1 Pack DLC. From that game that people seemed to really be interested in, and then it got mid-reviews because it was always going to get mid-reviews. I don't know what people were expecting from Digimon Time Stranger. It's one of those things that whenever I hear about a Digimon game, I always hear like the Digimon fan base come out from the ether and just be like, oh yeah, dude, like it's gonna be great. Like I love the Digimon games. And I'm like, whoa, where have you been? Like I didn't know you existed. And then like Digimon Time Stranger was announced, and it was like everybody was looking forward to it. And I saw a lot of traction on like all the marketing and everything. And I was like, what are you guys seeing here? I played the demo and I was like, this is the most mid JRPG I've ever played. Like, I don't know what you guys are expecting outside of it's just another Digimon RPG. And then it was. And I don't know. I guess people were happy with that. But it's getting DLC. So if you really wanted more of it, you can have it. Next was Super Robot Wars Y Contract from the Darkness DLC. This is some really niche, super Japanese, like robot fighting game that I've never heard of, never will hear of again. It's getting like Big O DLC, which like, dang. Big O, okay. I remember when that was on Toonami and don't remember it from anything else. Like, that is a show from a really long time ago, and I didn't realize had still a devout following enough to sell DLC for. But I guess in Japan, clearly that's a different audience. So, but that is so niche. I'd be surprised if that even comes to the West. I would not even expect it to. That's how niche that looked. Next was Monster Hunter Wilds gets another update. Who cares? Sonic Racing Cross World gets SpongeBob SquarePants DLC along with Knights, II from Super Monkey Ball, and Tangle and Whisper from the Sonic the Hedgehog comic series, which I did not know that. I saw those two characters come out. I was like, who are these guys? Like, I know who Charmy the Bee is, but I don't know who Tangle and Whisper are. Well, that's because I don't read the comics. It continues to surprise me, I guess, that there is still a vibrant Sonic the Hedgehog comic series that's out there. I actually had a friend who read them when we were younger. And I remember thinking it was so cool that Sonic was in a comic. But like, I also probably just underestimate the comic audience that's out there. Like, I know people read comics, but like, I just assumed that print media was dead. Like, nobody actually wanted to read print media anymore. But like, I know I'm wrong about that. So like, I don't know what I expect. I know so little about that particular environment that I don't know how many people are buying comics and where they are and what they're doing. But I definitely don't know who the frick Tangle and Whisper are. Obviously, Knights and II. Knights is from a more niche game from the Dreamcast. But Super Monkey Ball, everybody knows. But SpongeBob SquarePants was an interesting inclusion for sure. No idea how that deal was struck, but, I think SpongeBob and Sonic now are kind of big names within children entertainment. So I guess the crossover makes sense there. Like, the Sonic movies are really big with kids. So might as well put SpongeBob in it. It probably honestly seems like it fits. Maybe not for me. It doesn't make any sense to me. But like, from that perspective, I do think it does. So yeah, but for the Japanese audience, I certainly don't. That's a weird thing to announce with the Japanese audience. Next was Nevergrave, The Witch and the Curse, coming March 5th, 2026. It's a Metroidvania, but I think that is a little shortchanging it. It started off as a Metroidvania, and this is not the first and only game I'm going to say this about on this podcast, but it started off as a Metroidvania, and I was like, okay, Silk Song came out, who cares? And then as this trailer continued, I was like, wait, oh, it has that in it? Oh, they have that's in it too? Okay, well, this game is a lot bigger and better than I assumed. In all honesty, it went on to like show like, oh yeah, there's base building in this, and there's a farming element, and there's, X, Y, and Z, a million other things. And I was like, whoa. At some point, I almost got overloaded, and I was like, I went from like a weird arc of like, okay, this game's too simple, it's another standard Metroidvania, who cares, to like, oh, there's a lot of really interesting things packed into this game. That's so cool. And then I almost went to a point where I was like, okay, like this is a little, I'm getting over encumbered with features. I don't know how much I want to engage with all of these things. Like this is a little much, and like my excitement dropped a little bit. But like overall, I totally see why this made the showcase. It does actually look kind of cool from like just everything that's in it. Next up was Blaze Blue Entropy Effect X. It's a spin-off of Blaze Blue. It's a roguelite action game. Do we need another one of those? You're getting one, baby. Next was Damon and Baby. This is an isometric shooter. Kind of an interesting art style, considering it's a Japanese game. Kind of cartoony. You don't see that as much with them. You see, obviously, more of an anime art style for most Japanese games. But Damon and Baby, the only thing that really made this kind of perk my ears is like it's being developed by Arc System Works, who are the developers of Blaze Blue and many other very well-regarded fighting games. So this is obviously a very big step away from that from them. So we'll see how that turns out, and that's kind of what I'm interested in seeing. People love giving Arc System Works its props as being a really good developer, making a lot of really good fighting games, but like I don't know if they can do anything else. Like that just seems like such a niche to they've really kind of pegged themselves into. I'm interested to see if they can try something else out and see if it sticks. So next up, Kuran Makaism. So I feel like there could have been a better name for this. This is a Disgaea spinoff. Disgaea is a long-running tactics RPG. Very Japanese. Very well known for Prinny, who says dude a lot. It's a penguin, a demon penguin who says dude a lot. It's a blue demon penguin. Maybe you've heard of it. Anyway, it's an action RPG. So it's not like a turn-based tactics game anymore. I think Disgaea has clearly been on the ropes for a while. At one point, like the most recent mainline Disgaea game, the developers came out and said, like, if you don't buy this game, like, we're never making another Disgaea game again. And I don't think, obviously, that happened. I also don't know if that game sold very well. Not the first time I've seen a developer be like, if you don't buy this, we'll never make one of these again. And, like, Ubisoft actually does that all the time. But, like, in this case, I think Disgaea did need to step away. I think Disgaea is more well-known for its, like, characters and universe than it is for its tactics gameplay. So, yeah, try to move it into an action RPG setting. I think that actually would do it a lot of good. Action RPG is way more exciting to me. The problem is this is like a really mid-action JRPG. So, like, I don't expect anything crazy from this at all. We will see, but I expect this to be like in the 70s for sure. Like this is not going to be a massive seller. Next was Fate Trigger. It is a next generation tactical hero shooter built in Unreal Engine 5. Good luck, buddy. Next is Octopath Traveler 0. You heard of it? It's coming out on December 4th. Up next is Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. It's another look. We get to basically hear about Spider-Man coming to the game, which I'm pretty sure already knew. Ghost Rider, we definitely already knew. They just kind of were like, yeah, we decided to use like Robbie Ray as Ghost Rider instead of Nick Cage. And it's like, okay. Yeah, it makes sense because Marvel's probably trying to push that character more because, it's the new generation and stuff. So that makes sense. You probably were contractually obligated to do that. It had nothing to do with the fact that you probably wanted to use that character. But hey, it's nice that you can say that in marketing, okay? Closed beta is going to take place in December, specifically the 5th through the 7th. I was lucky enough to get a code to that, just kind of randomly selected for that as part of the beta period. I have learned over many years that I suck at fighting games. I'll never be good at them. I don't understand them, and I won't have fun with them. So the code is wasted on me. I will still try it, but it is going to be quite the interesting experience. I'll probably play it for 15 minutes and be like, wow, it's really nice that I got to try out this limited beta, and then I'll delete it and say, yeah, it's not for me. But anyway, Next, Elden Ring Night Ring, The Forsaken Hollows. It's a first major DLC expansion for Elden Ring Night Ring. The game that people were kind of okay with, I guess, when it first came out. You're going to get some more bosses, Nightfarers, probably like a map, I'd assume. I don't know. But that comes out December 4th. And then the last two things were hardware announcements. So a Sony monitor, which kind of you continue to see Sony rolling out more PC-focused stuff. Clearly Sony trying to incorporate or at least entice a more PC-focused, demographic, per se. Has a nice little charging hook for your DualSense controller. Very cute. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's better monitors out there. This one will probably be priced at a premium. I'm not very knowledgeable on monitors. I don't have a very good PC setup or one at all, really. So it's hard for me to say. But I would expect it to be charged at a premium just because it's the Sony branding on it. Just typically how those things go. But I do see this as just more of a step in the direction of, yep, we're making more of these PC things because we think that's probably a good angle to have, and I get that. And last up was a PS5 digital Japanese version. So this is basically just, it's a cheaper PS5. You're like, Henry, why did the Japanese get a cheaper PS5? You jerks! Why don't we get a cheaper PS5? They're upping the price on us, and it's because the yen is super weak, and they want to have a Japanese audience. If it was just the same price, if I could, by the way, this is also only somebody in Japan can buy it. I cannot buy this version of the console. And that is because if I bought it, I would be getting it at like a 30% discount because the yen is so weak right now that, like American scalpers would just pick it up, ship it to the U.S. and then sell it at whatever the market resale price was for that particular console at the time. Could be $100 more than it is now next week. Who knows? And, like they would make a 30% profit, easy peasy. And then guess what would happen? The Japanese market would be completely priced out because, they can't afford to do that. So it's basically a way for Sony to try to ensure the Japanese consumers can get their hands on a reasonably priced console given the economic state of the country. And specifically the price of the yen. But that was the Sony State of Play for Japan. It was really Japanese, I guess is the best way of saying that. I was expecting it to be a little bit more like, hey, yeah, these are Japanese games that also an American audience probably would be cool with playing. And like a lot of these games are like, no, you have to be Japanese to care about this at all, which is fine. They need their games too, but it's just interesting that it was a worldwide presentation that everybody could view, given that being the case. Obviously, a lot of it, if you didn't hear me speaking about it already, was DLC. Who cares? A lot of it was also like innocuous DLC. Like, oh yeah, here's a character coming to Sonic Racing. Here's a DLC for Monster Hunter Wilds that gets DLC every 5 months or every 5 weeks. Like, who cares? Like, it really just seemed like a lot of the presentation was filler. A lot of the presentation were games that most Americans won't care about. And I'm not necessarily going to fault them for that, which is why I feel really weird giving this one like a rating at all. Because it's like, well, yeah, I'm just clearly not the demographic for a lot of these announcements at all. So I don't feel comfortable doing that. I don't think I will. If I would, I'd probably give it like a D+. Like, I wasn't particularly enthused with the vast majority of what I saw. It was obviously not for me. So it is what it is. But there was a presentation that was specifically for me as an American with red patriotic blood flowing through my veins because all Americans are Xbox players. Or at least that's what Xbox has kind of relied on for the vast majority of its existence, is the American audience. So Xbox had a partner showcase, and by partner showcase, it means none of our first party will be talking about jack all. So cross your fingers we were able to get some indies to come on and show us their stuff, who are basically desperate for any payout. And that's kind of what is sad, is like, if I was an indie developer, the only reason I would go and even talk to Microsoft is if I was like, could not pay the bills, I needed the money, and Microsoft was really like, we will hand you a blank check, just show up. Like, please just show up. We need somebody here to make it look like our platform still has people that want to develop for it, that there is an incentive to put your game on our console and our platform, other than nobody is here. And like, because let's be honest, the vast majority of Xbox players are not going to be people buying indie games or third-party games anymore. They're going to be people who are buying Game Pass games, Xbox first-party games. If you, for some reason, are still around and using the Xbox as your de facto third-party, first-party machine, I would just be really concerned about the future of that, and I would be really concerned about, you know, what kind of support you're going to see moving forward, because you are a dying breed. You know, like, Microsoft is actively trying to kill you off. So like, I would be concerned about that. And that's why I think a lot of these announcements kind of seemed like that. So starting it off, we kind of knew I kind of had a feeling where this presentation was going. It's like, our big opener is Armistice. Armistice is a third-person roguelike shooter, specifically from the developers of Godfall, which I definitely kind of got that vibe. I don't think that's in the trailer anywhere. Had to kind of dig a little bit to find that. But like, Godfall, as we all remember, is like one of the launch titles for the new generation, and one of like the worst selling games from a console launch. It was critically and commercially absolutely stomped upon. But they are now making Armistice. This game did not look crazy. It really did kind of look like, what if Godfall developers wanted to make a roguelike shooter third-person action game? And it's like, yeah, that's Armistice. And I mean, if that was cool to you, that's interesting, because not many people thought Godfall was good. So I just struggle to see this game finding an audience. It does not strike me as something I'm drawn to at the moment. So I am already kind of like immediately shaken by this presentation. I'm like, okay, here's our big opener, the third-person action roguelike game from Godfall developers. Okay, so Armistice was our opener. It's followed up by The Mound, Omen of Cthulhu, which is a 4-person co-op horror game. Basically Left 4 Dead, but with more horror vibes. Cool. We have a lot of those on the market nowadays. I just got Warhammer Vermintide for free. So that's cool. We'll see how that one shakes out. Dave the Diver plus the Jungle DLC coming in 2026. This is just Dave the Diver is coming to Xbox. Did you know that Dave the Diver, one of the biggest quote-unquote indie games of the past 2 years, didn't come to Xbox until multiple years after its release? It's still technically not there? Yeah, I just kind of assumed it was. Nope, it was not. So it is there. Kind of shocking. Shocking that, this big indie game probably had to be fed money by Microsoft to port the game to their console. And I mean, like, if you are really like, dude, I gotta be playing this on the Xbox, I, again, feel really bad for you, because clearly you could be playing these games if you were on another console. Any other console, actually, the PC, PlayStation, and Switch. So, sorry about that. Crowsworn was our next one. This one, actually, I kind of vibed with. I was like, all right, cool. So you're playing as like a plague doctor guy with a top hat and a gun and a scythe. pretty cool, but it's a Metroidvania game. Pretty stylish, cool looking. It started off, and I was like, oh, cool, another Metroidvania game, which, like, I said about the Witch game in the PlayStation Direct, and then I was like, oh, wait. As the trailer progressed, the combat started getting more and more complex, and I was like, actually, this game looks kind of rad. I was like, dude, I know Hollow Knight Silksong exists, but I don't know. I kind of got my eye on this one. This one looks pretty cool. Not only that, but it's coming to Game Pass day one. So, if I'm not drowning in a million other games still, which I certainly will be, maybe I'll check this one out. We'll see what reviews give you. Actually, one of my top games of the presentation. So, pretty cool looking game. But it was also not announced here, by the way. This game has been announced. It just is being shown off at an Xbox Partner Showcase now. So next was Echo Generation 2. It is a turn-based voxel-looking game where you fight supernatural things with your gremlin sidekick. Don't get me started. I don't know anything about Echo Generation. I didn't know there was an original Echo Generation, but apparently it did well enough for it to get a sequel. It looks interesting. I'll say that much. So, you know, if you really liked Echo Generation 2, good news. You're getting a sequel, baby. Next was probably the highlight of the entire presentation and probably what made the most news by a long shot, which is Vampire Crawlers. Obviously, from the makers of Vampire Survivors. Now, what I assumed this was when I first saw the trailer was an expansion to Vampire Survivors, because they add on to that game all the time with new weapons and characters and stuff like that. Not so. This is a completely separate game, completely new game from the ground up, and you will be playing basically a deck building like dungeon crawler, which I think is a really cool take. I think if we're applying the Vampire Survivors formula to something, I think it makes sense. And the gameplay they showed kind of gave you that vibe of like, oh yeah, like you can break the frick out of this game and become super powerful. And the trailer kind of tried to emphasize like, well, you don't have to break the game. You can just be really tactical too. And I guess that's cool, but the appeal to me for Vampire Survivors in any kind of game like that has always been breaking the game. It's never been about tactically trying to get through the game in any way. But like obviously this is a different genre, so that's kind of why they're emphasizing that. But this is something I'll definitely keep my eye on. If it's like $4 or something and gets good reviews, I can see this being another major problem for people in terms of like their productivity. Another addictive game will also come to Game Pass Ultimate at release. So I guess even if it is $4, doesn't really matter. But those guys need to charge more than $4. Please charge like $9.99, something like that. You kind of deserve it at this point. Next, 007 First Light. There's like a car that's coming to it. Okay, that's cool. Roadside Research. This is what I think a lot of people have lovingly determined as a genre called friend slop. So you are playing as aliens with little pieces of paper on their face. You can customize the paper. That actually seemed like the most fun part of the trailer to me. But you're running a gas station, and you have to essentially blend in, not give yourself away as a group of aliens running a gas station, not alert the authorities. It's another one of those kind of stock the shelves, deal with kind of mundane tasks, but in a goofy setting. So this is a game that I think is going to live or die by if your friends want to play it. And more specifically, honestly, I think a lot of these games like Peak and stuff typically kind of blow up from influencer streamers, big streamers that pick it up, have good times with it. So depending on how that shakes out, this game is either like a success or a failure. So we'll see. We'll see. Next was Total Chaos from the developer of Turbo Overkill. It's kind of more of like it's a boomer shooter, but with more of a survival horror vibe to it. Looked genuinely creepy and like a lot of fun. If you like boomer shooters and you've always wanted one to have a little bit more of a horror vibe to it, I think you're in for a lot of luck. Total chaos. Next is Reanimal. Basically just said you can play the demo. Isn't that cool? Yep. I did play the demo for Reanimal, and it is more Little Nightmares. This is obviously from the people who made Little Nightmares 1 and 2. Little Nightmares 3 was not made by them. That was a game that just came out this Halloween season. But it was made by Quantic Dream. Not Quantic Dream. Am I right? Am I wrong? The same people who made Dark Pictures Anthology. Those games. They are an Until Dawn, stuff like that. They made Little Nightmares 3. Wasn't reviewed, super hot. I really liked Little Nightmares 1, didn't love Little Nightmares 2. Didn't catch me in the same way for some reason. The Reanimal demo just is like, I played the Little Nightmares 3 demo and the Reanimal demo. And the Little Nightmares 3 demo, I was like, this is more Little Nightmares. And Reanimal was at least a little bit different. It's co-op, has a different vibe. Or not a different vibe, but a different like setting, and like there's actual voice acting in the game. So there's a little bit more going on in Reanimal, but definitely is going to be kind of a creepy time with Reanimal. So if you're into the Little Nightmare series, I think you're definitely going to get what you want out of this. Next was Erosion, an isometric roguelike shooter action game in a Western voxel setting. I was like, actually, I don't really love like action roguelites or whatever. I don't need another one in my life. And I was like, no, this actually looks pretty cool. But what really sold me is every time you die, the game fast forwards in time 10 years. You're trying to save your daughter, and like the trailer ends with essentially like if you die enough, your daughter will just die of old age. And the town you're in like advances with time. It kind of becomes more decrepit, and the merchants in your village also age. It means that you are definitively punished for dying in a roguelike, which you just don't see very often. And it makes it feel like you actually need to be progressing in the game, not that you're like, oh, well, this run is just another run. Hopefully it's a good run. Like, you actually do feel some sense of urgency, which I think is probably a good thing, depending. We'll see how it works out. Very interested. Next, Zoopunk. I immediately, as soon as I saw this bunny, was like, oh, this is from the Fist developers. And it is. It is from Thai Games over in China. They are the developers of Fist, which is a Metroidvania-style game where you play as a rabbit with like a big mech arm, which is the Fist. The titular Fist. But anyway, Zoopunk is like a third-person action game. Another Souls-like, you could say. It did not sell me. It looks like kind of a janky Souls-like, to be frank. The coolest thing it has going is you're an animal, and everybody's an animal, and you have friends that are animals, and they can help you out with boss fights and stuff. That's kind of the coolest thing I saw. And then I was like, okay, I don't need another Souls-like. And moving on. Next was Clover Pit. This is just a port. It's coming to Game Pass day one. It actually came out the day of announcement. So if you are on the Xbox and you really wanted to play Clover Pit, here you go. Clover Pit is one of those roguelites that blew up recently. You're just basically playing a slot machine and kind of altering the odds of the slot machine as you go, and trying to pay off your debts. It's kind of got a grim, dark setting to it, kind of a depressing setting, but it is very addictive from what I have heard. There's just so many of these games out now. It's so hard to choose which one of these you go with, so it's one that I'd like to try, and now that it's on Game Pass, maybe I will. But just kind of an announcement that it's here. Next was an interesting one, Hitman Assassination, World of Assassination, getting a new limited time kill. So this happens every once in a while. They'll get a celebrity, and again, I don't know how they afford this. I guess there must be some really profitable in-game transactions with the Hitman World of Assassination crowd, but this is Eminem. So Eminem has already been a limited time assassination before, and then they got him to come back. But this time you're not killing Eminem, you're killing Slim Shady, which is obviously Eminem's alter ego. You are contracted by Eminem to kill Slim Shady. So quite the twist and an interesting and fun one, I think. I've always found these hits to be very interesting. I've just never found it interesting enough to go back and do and like re-download the entire game just to do one mission. Even if it's a really cool mission, it's just never been enough for me. So I've never done that, but you know, I appreciate that they put so much time and effort into those missions. Next was Tides of Annihilation. This is a really cool looking game, actually. They just showed off a boss fight, just a straight boss fight. It stood out. One of the main voice actresses for, not only was she narrating the presentation, like giving the like in between cuts, narration and stuff of like, this is the next game, but she was also the main character in this particular game. She's one of the main characters in Clair, Obscur, which is pretty cool. She's a great voice actress, and I really enjoyed her voice, and it was something that I immediately noticed when she started speaking. But it's a cool third-person action game. Looked really cool. Very high spectacle, high octane. I would struggle to call it a Souls. It looks Souls-y, but like it's more of an action game, is what I would say. So I honestly think it looks pretty freaking cool. And I will be keeping an eye on it. I don't know much outside of the footage that I saw, but what I saw looked pretty freaking rad. And last, we have, of course, Raj Kali Yuga. Excuse me. So Raj, this was by the way, the showstopper. This was the big final note. Raj this is a sequel to Raj, specifically a kind of isometric beat 'em up game. It was not super great. Like I played like maybe a third of it way back in the day when it originally came out. It was on Game Pass, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll try it out. And it was mostly known for being an Indian game, and by that I mean Indian culture. It was, I believe, developed by Indian developers, and then was primarily set in like an Indian setting and had a lot of Indian inspirations and all that good stuff. A lot of Indian culture was baked in. This seems to be very similar, but like I remember playing that game and immediately thinking, really the most interesting part about this is the setting. Like nobody makes games in India. Nobody tries to put a lot of cultural emphasis of India in a lot of games. So it's really cool to see that. It's very unique. But like as a game, it was just another like dungeon crawler-esque, you know, beat 'em up, isometric style. The big thing here is it seems this game has been shifted to a third-person action setting. Cool. I haven't seen any gameplay. This was a strictly, you know, cinematic trailer. Never trust a cinematic trailer. And I would imagine that this is still a small budget third-person action game. And I can imagine that would be rough. I think this game is probably going to be in the 70s, just based on the fact that the first game was not anything particularly wowing, and this is going to be a big step up in terms of budget and very different from what they made previously, so I don't expect much. But you can kind of tell that by that, opener and closer, there wasn't a lot here. The Vampire Survivor spinoff was Vampire Crawler was probably the biggest announcement by a long shot. I appreciate Xbox trying to convince people that people still want to develop on their console, and there is a reason. Like, hey, all the cool kids are doing it. You know, like I don't know. That doesn't convince me. This is not a stellar blow your socks off presentation by any means. This is an easy like C-, you know, kind of presentation. Yeah. I mean, there's not much to say about it. I think neither one of these presentations were very wowing or very interesting. So it was sad, to say the least. You're expecting more from these presentations, but again, I feel like a lot of them are just, at this point, obligations, marketing. They have to, contractual. It seemed a little bit more desperate from Microsoft. It seemed a little bit more obvious from Sony, but it is what it is. Next, we're running pretty long already, and we have a lot to continue to cover. So, Valve announces a new Steam console, controller, and VR headset. This is an interesting one. It's an interesting one for a few reasons. So, the Steam machine is something that you're going to be using for, it's kind of an in-between, right? It's not a console, it's not a PC, but it is a PC that you can hook up to your TV. That's kind of its purpose. So, if you didn't know some history, Valve has made all of these items before. They've made a VR headset before, they've made a Steam machine before, and they've made a controller before. Obviously, the Valve Index was their previous headset. I've never seen or heard of anybody who actually uses it in my personal life. It's one of the higher-end VR headsets. I'm a big VR advocate, but I don't see a lot of stuff outside of Half-Life Alyx that people are like, yeah, you really need to pick up a VR headset to play these games. I actually, just out of curiosity, opened up Meta the other day to see like what, not Meta like Facebook, but like Meta Quest, to see what games were trending on like Meta, because Deadpool, the new Deadpool game for Meta Studios just came out. And it's getting mid reviews, I guess. Not too surprising there. But like the Batman game did really well. So like you kind of expect maybe that one would be good too. Who knows? And I was looking through like, okay, here are all the trending games. Here are all the games that, are selling well. And a lot of them are free games. A lot of them are cheap games. And a lot of them are friend slop games. I think what it seems to me is VR has really become a pool for children, like where they all play a free game, like their mom and dad get them a headset, and they all play a free game or something like Roblox or, whatever that monkey game is, like Ape Out or so. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a very popular like gorilla game that is on VR. But, they play those games. And that just doesn't seem like a very good incentive to pick up a super pricey VR headset, is to play these really dinky friend slop games. Maybe for a child that would be a good incentive, but like for a hardcore gamer like myself, I don't see a lot of reason to pick up a VR headset. So right off the bat, this VR headset update, hey, great for people who are into VR. I don't know what you're using it for. Like, I genuinely have no clue. The only thing you have really gotten your money's worth from for the original Valve Index was Half-Life Alyx. And that is for years ago, and there's no sign of anything else. People are anticipating this announcement to come with like another Half-Life game. It seems to be kind of ebbing and flowing in that direction, but that is what everybody says every day. Is like, oh yeah, dude, Half-Life 3 is going to get announced this year. Like, that's been floating around for a really long time. So like, duh. I don't know if we're going to get that or not. It just is what it is. But I can't see a reason why anybody would really want to pick up another headset. I don't see people really talking about the headset, though. What people are really talking about here is the Steam machine. The Steam machine, like I said, they made one a long time ago, but it didn't really catch on. And that's why I find this conversation of people being like, yo, a new Steam machine, holy frick, I can't wait to pick this thing up, is a little interesting, because nobody really cared a decade ago, and maybe the times have changed, right? But nobody cared a decade ago when the Steam machine originally came out. There were some different reasons probably why that was the case. It wasn't as powerful, and Valve kind of left it up to developers and like hardware manufacturers to kind of determine the SKUs of it. So like it was kind of all over the place. It was basically like a modular PC in a lot of ways, like, but the price range for it ranged from like $500 to $6,000. Like you could get a SKU of a Steam machine that was $6,000. So like there were, I think even at 500, I think it's a bit of a reach, and that was a decade ago. Like I don't think people wanted to pay $500 for that. And not only that, but you know, like I would assume most people who are already going to find a lot of incentive to pick up a Steam machine are people with a Steam library. And those are people who probably have a rig of some sort that can handle video games. So like really, and this is where I think the Steam machine comes in, is you have kind of an in-between for somebody who really wants that simplicity of console gaming, but also wants to be a PC gamer. They want to have that foot in the PC ecosystem. And look, I have a Steam Deck, and that's kind of how I've been utilizing my PC gaming. Like I don't have a rig that can handle anything, or a computer that can handle many high-end games. And a lot of games, and this was always a huge problem for me, a lot of games are exclusive to the PC and they don't come to the console, or at least they don't come to console for a very long time, or they don't, some never come to console. So I felt really boxed out of a lot of video games that weren't ever coming to PlayStation because that was my primary console. So I picked up a Steam Deck, and it worked as a really great intermediary device for me to play these games. And I even got like a really cheap dock on Amazon for it that I can hook up my Steam Deck to my TV. And it kind of works as a Steam machine, at least in this particular case. So for me, I don't have much of a reason to get a Steam machine. The reasoning would be if you want to play really powerful games. You know, you want to play with a really powerful rig or something like that. And like I have just never needed to do that. Graphics have never been something I'm really super into. You know, like frame rate, as long as it's fine, I don't really have to have it. You know, like it's a nice plus, but like I'm not going to pay $1,000 extra to just have a, you know, good frame rate on my games or whatever. Like I have fine frame rate on my PlayStation 5, and that's where I play the vast majority of my games. So like I don't need that. So what is the Steam machine again? Let's rewind for an audience that's somewhere in the middle. I think that's a really niche audience. You already have people like me who are in console, who are ingrained in console. I don't need a Steam machine. I do have a Steam library that, hey, I would love to play on my PC, but most of those games are small indie games. Most of the AAA games that I have, I can easily play on my PS5. So I have a little dock I can hook up to my TV. I don't need a Steam Deck or a Steam machine to do that, right? If I already have if I really care about specs, I already have a rig that is massive and can handle these really labor-intensive, high-process games, right? So you're really talking to people who already have a really powerful rig, who want to have access to a more streamlined console kind of experience. And I love that idea, but if you told me this thing was $200, I'd be like, great, sign me up. But here's where we get into a problem. So after this thing was announced, Linus Tech Tips, who's a very big YouTuber, one of the biggest tech YouTubers in the world, he came out and he said, look, I was talking to Valve. Obviously, I'm not going to direct quote it, but I'm going to paraphrase. I was talking to Valve and I said, hey, can't wait for this thing to be console priced. And they're like, hey, what do you mean by like console priced? And he was like, you know, like $500. It's kind of, you know, where most consoles are kind of hitting around right now. And apparently the quote unquote, like the energy in the room was not great. So we already know, based on that response, this thing is going to be more than $500. Okay. How much does that mean? Well, you look at the specs. And you look at what Valve is saying, and Valve came out and said, "Hey, this is not like this is competing with PC. Like this is a PC. This is not competing with console necessarily. It is a SKU of a PC, and we want it to be priced appropriately as if it was a PC." And okay, a PC is like $1,000. Like a PC with the specs that the Steam machine is, you're probably looking at somewhere between $750 and $1,000. And for what the Steam machine is, which is just the intermediary device that kind of supports people playing either, instead of playing a PC devout experience, you're playing more of a console PC experience. It just seems like that is a really high price point to try to get people into this particular device. Because why would I spend another $750,000? That would definitely price me out. Why would I pay another $750 when I already have a PC or another device like my Steam Deck that can already kind of do what I want? Just for the convenience of being able to play on my TV? Because I also have a console. Because I want a console experience. So you're really trying to pry people away from a PlayStation or a Switch, and you're really trying to pry people away from, or people to additionally invest into their PC setup for basically the ability to just play their Steam games on a TV, which it just seems like that's such a niche thing. If the price is not right on this, who the frick wants it? And I don't think the price is going to be at a place based on what people are saying, based on the vibes in the room. I don't think we're going to get something less than, $700. And if it's $750, $800, bro, if it hits $800, I think a lot of people are going to nope out on this thing. A lot of people are going to say, no, thank you, signore. It is way higher than what I want it to be. At that point, I can get a gaming laptop, like a pretty good gaming laptop, and I can just kind of hook that up, I can just kind of hook that up to my TV with an HDMI cord, or I can, just play it on the go like a Steam Deck, and I can also utilize it in a million other different ways that, this device can take Windows, but you're not going to be navigating it like a PC. At that point, just get a freaking gaming laptop. It seems like an odd move. This thing needed to be a budgetary device. The Steam Deck was already pretty reasonably priced when it originally came out. So it just surprises me that who's this audience for? Two, why is it being priced the way it is? It just seems like we really should have tried to maximize the power while keeping the price down as low as possible, and it doesn't seem like that's what they're trying to do. They are trying to maximize the power and keep the price applicable to what the power is, and that just seems like a really bad move. I wish I could be excited for this. I love my Steam Deck. I cannot get excited about this device because I feel like it does not benefit anybody, really, other than somebody who just hated the fact that they had to hook up an HDMI cord to their TV, that's kind of the only person I see really getting much out of this. And it's somebody with a lot of disposable income as well with a price tag like that. And then I don't like the controller either. It seems bulky, and I hate having touchpads on it. I already don't like having touchpads on my Steam Deck, and I don't think that they make it very easy to play games that require mouse. If you're playing a first-person shooter, I think you would much rather just use your analog sticks. And if you're playing something like an RTS, I cannot imagine you actually enjoying your time with it using touchpads on a Steam Deck or the Steam controller. So it just seems like a really bulky controller to me that I get is trying to give you the ability to use mouse controls if you needed to, but it just, I don't know. I've never been a fan of those for gaming, and I will probably feel the same So really all of these announcements, while I think have promise in some way, shape, or form, I think all of the new Steam announcements, Steam hardware announcements, I don't see them doing very well. I don't see an audience for VR at the moment. I don't see an audience for a large audience for PC intermediary console hybrid kind of consoles. And I don't see people wanting to use frickin' trackpads for gaming. So there you go. Really, I really didn't think I was that down on it until I started talking about it. I really just assumed that, this is a console for PC players. That's for me. I am a console gamer who wants to try to lean more into PC gaming, and it's like, well, I don't know. The more I think about it, I don't think I do. No, I think I'll just stick to what I got. So very unfortunate that's how that kind of worked out. Next up, this one I was looking forward to. All right, my favorite time, the Game Awards. Oh, goody gumdrops. All right, so we got all of the Game Awards announced this week. Fun stuff. Everybody likes to complain about this stuff. We're going to go through all of them. We're going to see, maybe I'll say who I think's going to win. And then we're going to go into maybe general thoughts about the overall Game Awards themselves. People love to comment on this stuff. So let's start off. We have a lot to go through. First, it's the 3 categories that I don't give a frick about. Esports. I don't know anything about this, so this is all just me reading gibberish. Best esports team, Jin.G for League of Legends, NRG for Valorant, Team Falcons for Dota 2, Team Liquid PH for Mobile Legends Bang Bang. Okay, interesting name. Team Vitality for Counter-Strike 2. NRG is a fun pun, so I'm going to give it to NRG. Best esports athlete, Brawk, BRAWK, for Valorant, Chovy for League of Legends, Forsaken for Valorant, Kekaru for Street Fighter, Minardi for Street Fighter, and Zywoo for Counter-Strike 2. I've heard of Forsaken and I have heard of Zywoo, so I'm going to give it to Zywoo because that's funner to say. Best esports game, Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, League of Legends, Mobile Legends, Bang Bang, and Valorant. Dang, nothing really broke into it, I guess. I don't know. Valorant. Sure. Okay, I can speak a little bit more to the rest of these. Content Creator of the Year, we have Kydril, I think is how you pronounce it. I actually don't know who that is. Kai Sanat, of course, Moist Critical, Sakura Miko, and The Burnt Peanut. I have not heard of The Burnt Peanut before, but I do appreciate The Burnt Peanut. Sakura Miko is a HoloLive VTuber. Interesting how they chose her. Last year they chose Pekara, who was in Death Stranding 2. So not sure why Sakura is getting the nod there when we have English VTubers as well. But doesn't matter. Either way, Sakura Miko would be my personal vote because I care about HoloLive. I'm a HoloLive weirdo. But I think, obviously like Kai Cenat has to be the biggest streamer on this by a long shot. And even though I don't approve of everything he does, like he clearly is like a massive deal. So, I think sure, Kai Cenat, however these things were chosen. The most anticipated game, we have 007 First Light, Grand Theft Auto 6. Guess what's going to win? Do we need to go any further on this list? Marvel's Wolverine, Resident Evil Requiem, and Witcher 4. Obviously, it's going to be Grand Theft Auto 6. Just because I don't care about it doesn't mean the vast majority of the world does, in a very large way, care about it. So that is obviously the most anticipated game of the year. Best adaptation. Everyone's favorite chicken jockey. The Minecraft movie. Devil May Cry, the series on Netflix. The Last of Us Season 2. Splinter Cell Death Watch. Everybody watched Splinter Cell, the series. That was a big hit. And Until Dawn, the movie. Bro, I don't know. The Last of Us 2, I was kind of let down by The Last of Us Season 2. Wasn't as into it as I really wanted to be. And I didn't see anything else on this list. So I think it'll probably go to either Minecraft movie or The Last of Us, just because those are the two biggest IP on here by a long shot. So it's just funny to see this category at all, because it's like half of these things sucked. Like, no one watched Splinter Cell Death Watch, and everybody hated Until Dawn, the movie. Like, come on. Like, I know they're making a lot more video game things now, but like, they're not good. They're definitely not good things. So I guess just put anything that's a video game adaptation on it. Next is Best Multiplayer, which is different from Best Esports Game. In fact, there are no crossovers in this, so very interesting. Clearly, I don't understand esports, because I assume at least one of these would be there. First is Arc Raiders, obviously a big deal right now. Battlefield 6 obviously popped off this year. Elden Ring Night Rain will not win at all. Peak, the fun little indie game that could, and Split Fiction. I know my favorite here is easily Split Fiction. Great game, but I think everybody's forgotten about it. I think this could go to Peak. I think it's still in the conversation enough, and I think it could go to Arc Raiders or Battlefield. I think probably, I think recency bias is going to win the day, so probably Arc Raiders? I don't know. It really could go up to either one of them, Battlefield 6 or Arc Raiders, but we'll go with recency bias. Recency bias tends to win, so we'll see. Best sports and racing game. My eyes are going to glaze over for this one. EA Sports FC 26, F1 25, Mario Kart World Rematch, and Sonic Racing Crossworlds. Actually, that was much more inspiring than I expected. Okay, dang. There were 3 arcade games in that list. 3 out of 5. I actually don't know what would win here. Rematch and Sonic Racing Crossworlds didn't do numbers in terms of reviews. Mario Kart is Mario Kart, but like, was Mario Kart World that good? Was it that good? I think it was kind of disappointing. I think most people would kind of agree Mario Kart World was disappointing, especially like the open world elements of that game kind of sucked. But would it win for a best sports or racing game? I don't know. I think it has enough brand recognition behind it that people would just vote for it anyway. Probably one of the more played games this year. So, sure. I'll give it to Mario Kart World. We'll see. Best sim or strategy game, The Alters, Final Fantasy Tactics, The Ivalice Chronicles, Jurassic World Evolution 3, Sid Meier's Civilization 7, Tempest Rising, which I don't know what that is, and 2 Point Museum. Would people give it to Final Fantasy Tactics? I would love to see that. I would love to see The Alters win, but nobody played that game. I think The Alters is so cool, just conceptually. I would love to get around to playing it, but there's no way that wins. Sid Meier's Civilization tanked in ratings this year. It was in the 70s, which blew my mind in terms of reviews. I really don't know who would win here. I've never heard of Tempest Rising. 2 Point Museum is just kind of okay. It has a lot of people who love it, but like, I think most people are just like, this is a good game. Not like this is the best game of the year. Jurassic World Evolution 3 is probably, I don't think anybody blew up over that. And then the altars nobody played. I would love to see Final Fantasy Tactics win, but it's a remake. But so who knows? I'm gonna just go with a heart pick on this. We're gonna go Final Fantasy Tactics. We'll see how that shakes out. Best Family: Donkey Kong Bonanza, Lego Party, Lego Voyagers, Mario Kart World, Sonic Racing Crossworlds, and Split Fiction. I don't know if I'd even consider Split Fiction to be a family game. There's some messed up stuff in there, kind of like with It Takes Two. There's some stuff I necessarily wouldn't think kids would love, but it's not as bad though. It's probably family enough. Obviously Donkey Kong Bonanza. This is easily the best reviewed game out of all of these. The most played game out of all. No, probably more people played Mario Kart World, but yeah, it's a no-brainer. I think Donkey Kong's gonna win that by a long shot. Best Fighting: 2XKO, Capcom Fighting Collection 2, Fatal Fury, City of the Wolves, Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, and Virtua Fighter 5 Revo World Stage. Dang, these fighting games always have weird names. 2XKO because I heard about it. I mean, I don't know. A lot of these are games that are revamps or very niche. 2XKO at least had a big marketing budget behind it, so maybe. We'll see. I really have no knowledge on that. Like I said, I'm not a big fighting game guy, so we'll see about that one. That one's completely outside my wheelhouse. Best RPG. 2 of Obsidian games on here. Avowed, The Outer Worlds 2, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Monster Hunter Wilds, and Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Dang, that's actually a pretty crowded category there. Obviously, Clair Obscur. I think that game's going to win Game of the Year. So, I think, when you're up against Game of the Year, you just kind of bow to it and just say, yeah, fine. We'll take the L here. At least we're going down to the champ. So, very unfortunate. I'd feel really bad if I was Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and it's oh, well, everybody loved our game, or Monster Hunter Wilds, and it's well, yeah, everybody really enjoyed the game, except for PC players for Monster Hunter Wilds. But dang, yeah, we just went up against the GOAT that year, so just nothing you can do. Best Action Adventure: Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, Ghost of Yotei, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, Hollow Knight, Silk Song, and Split Fiction. This is tough. I think Yotei's immediately out. I think Indiana Jones and the Great Circle's immediately out. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is one of those games that everybody from last year was yo, this is one of the best games of the year. And then that game came out right around review time. And then as soon as review time passed, everybody was oh yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's all right. Split Fiction, I think it was an early year release, and everybody's forgotten about it. It sucks. That game's great, but everybody's forgotten about it. Hollow Knight Silk Song is the obvious one I think people would want to win, but I think a lot of people would also vote for Death Stranding. I think this is a toss-up between Hollow Knight and Death Stranding, and I think either one of them can take it, to be frank. I think Hollow Knight has more people playing it, so I think Hollow Knight will probably come out on top, but a lot of game journalists will be playing Death Stranding as well because they're big Kojima heads, so we'll see. I would be rooting for Death Stranding too here, but Hollow Knight has a possibility. It has a possibility of sneaking in, or it's not sneaking in. I think it has a possibility of really running away with it. That's a better way of saying it. Best Action: Battlefield 6, Doom: The Dark Ages. People remember that one. Hades 2, Ninja Gaiden 4, and Shinobi: Art of Vengeance. Good to see Shinobi get a nod. Shinobi, kind of a game that came out of nowhere, reviewed really well. I love the demo for it, so wouldn't mind playing it at some point in the future, but very, very well-reviewed game from a studio that I think has made some really good games in the past as well. Ninja Gaiden 4 kind of flopped. Hades 2, obviously one of the best reviewed games of the year. Doom: The Dark Ages was really mixed in its reception. And then Battlefield 6. So I think this is an easy Hades 2 win at the end of the day. Best VR/AR. This will be fun. Let's see what VR games came out this year. Alien: Rogue Incursion, Arcane Age, Ghost Town, Marvel's Deadpool VR, and The Midnight Walk. I don't think any of these games reviewed super well. So, bro, I genuinely don't know. I would love to know what happens here. I'm going to give it to Alien. I heard people talking about Alien, so like that would probably be my vote. We'll see. That is anybody's guess. Who the frick is playing VR games? We'll see what they think. Best mobile game: Destiny Rising, Persona 5, The Phantom X, Sonic Rumble, Uma Masume, Pretty Derby, and Wuthering Waves. Uma Masume is the obvious interesting pickup here. The standout. Very much a meme game that blew up this year. It is a horse racing game, but the horses are anime women. So that's pretty cool. Right up my alley. I didn't really ever hear anybody talking about the Persona 5 mobile game. I heard it. I saw some trailers for it. It looked pretty cool. Never heard anybody talking about it. And then Wuthering Waves, I know, is also a console game, but I know people really like Wuthering Waves, so I think it could go to Wuthering Waves. Genuinely, I see this going to Wuthering Waves or Uma Masume as a meme pick, just because people played it. I just don't think most people voting in these awards play that many mobile games. So they're going to go with what they know. And what they know is, well, honestly, all of these are from properties I think everybody would know. But I think most people would probably have played Wuthering Waves voting on this because it's just a very popular free-to-play game. But I'm rooting for the underdog here in Uma Masume. That would be pretty cool as a weeb to see that win it out. Best debut indie game. Now, there's a little bit of controversy around this one, so we'll go through the nominees and we'll talk about it. Blueprints, which a lot of people are saying got snubbed for Game of the Year. Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. Despalote, Dispatch, and Megabonk, as Jeff Keighley would say. So, I should clarify, one of these is no longer nominated, and that's Megabonk. Megabonk from Vedinad Studios. The developer actually came out and said, "Do not nominate me for this." So he basically, again, paraphrasing this, said, "Hey, look, I've made other indie games. I've made other games just under different names of like my studio or whatever was under a different name. So like I have made other games before. So I don't think it's really fair for me to be considered like a new debut indie game. And so I don't really want to be nominated for this." Like, and you know, this is stuff I learn every year. Is like, well, he kind of had to put himself in the running for being nominated for every category. And so he didn't know he's going to be nominated for debut indie game when he put himself up there for the awards. It's the only thing he was nominated for, but he was nominated. And let's go through these. Clair Obscur specifically is, yes, this is the first game from these developers, but all of these developers came from, or a vast majority of them came from Ubisoft. Same thing from Dispatch. Dispatch is a lot of Telltale ex-employees and Ubisoft ex-employees, so it's none of these guys' first game either. So, like, what constitutes as a quote-unquote debut indie game? Like, a lot of these people have probably made other games before, and I think when I hear debut indie game, I typically associate it with, yeah, this is the first thing I really know. This is the first thing that was really successful for them. And, you know, maybe their first venture into game development is hopefully what you're looking for. But like 99% of these people, their first game ever was probably like, I don't know, a Flappy Bird clone or something like that. They've been making games for a long time. Maybe they haven't published them, you know, like maybe they have published them, but under a different name. Maybe they worked at a different studio, you know, like X, Y, and Z. So you can really split hairs over this, is what I'm saying. And it seems like in this instance, I look at this and I'm like, yeah, you're kind of splitting hairs. Like, it's a debut indie game. Like, okay, this is your first big success. This is the first thing anybody's really heard of you from having developed. So, like, you're going up against Dispatch and Clair Obscur. Bro, I think you're fine. Like those guys have easily made a million other games. Like, that's a very talented group of people. When I hear debut indie game, I hear this is a developer that has made nothing before. You know, like, it's very new, and we're trying to recognize, you know, studios or developers that are still trying to get their legs and probably don't have as much support as most people out there. That's kind of what, in all honesty, this and Despelote are probably the two biggest examples of that on this list. Every other one is kind of a very well-polished, well-made, highly budgeted game that took millions of dollars to make. I don't think Megabonk is that. I don't think Despelote is that. So, I don't know. Jeff Keighley even came out and was like, look, we're really glad that he came out and said this, and I'm glad he was very honest, because we don't want people like that on the list. So that's really cool that he came out and told us. And I'm like, I mean, I still think he kind of embodies the spirit of what I assume this award is, but it just kind of goes to show the awards are not very well thought out, and they're not very well defined, and the whole concept behind an award show of video games and how we're trying to recognize them is odd, to say the least. Best Independent Game: Absolem, Ball X Pit, Blueprints, Clair Obscur, Hades 2, and Hollow Knight Silk Song. I know Ball X Pit was published by Devolver Digital, which is a very solid mid-tier publisher. So, what the frick are we considering a independent game? Like, I don't know. Like, Clair Obscur was developed by Kelper Interactive. You know, like, I'm pretty sure that's a publisher. Like, a lot of these games are quote-unquote indie, but had major backing in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, there are games like Hollow Knight that weren't, and, probably, I don't know, maybe Absolem? Probably Absolem. Absolem's easily $1 million+ game, I would think. But, like, a lot of these games are big budget games. So, like, normally when you think independent game, you think, oh, well, this is, like, kind of what you would maybe expect from a debut indie game, like a small developer that doesn't have a lot of financial capital to really make something, kind of scrappy, kind of deal. And really, these are all what I would kind of consider B-tier developers, B-tier publishers, people who had millions of dollars backing their game and very solid financial capital that allowed them to produce these games. Most indie games I would think of as like mother effers who can hardly, like, they're eating frickin' microwave ramen every night to get by. Like, that's kind of what you think when you think of an indie game initially. And I think the Game Awards, especially the Game Awards, has really moved away from that kind of an idea of what an indie game is. And this is something we've gone over before with, like, Dave the Diver. That was nominated for indie title at one point. It was like, well, actually it was backed by a massive publisher and, like, had millions of dollars in funding and was a really well-polished and well-made game, which most indie games are not typically stereotyped for that. So it's like, that's definitely not indie. So it's like, okay, what the frick is? Like, where are we drawing the line? Like, I don't know, but I would think a lot of these games probably step over that line. But again, it's just kind of one of those things. Where do we draw the line? I don't frickin' know. But, like, the Game Awards sure haven't figured it out very well either, or at least aren't very good at communicating it to people. So, next. Best Community Support. How you rank this and how you even get nominations for this, I don't even know. but cool. I don't involve myself in many communities, so we'll see. Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 14, Fortnite, Helldivers 2, and No Man's Sky. I don't frickin' know. Baldur's Gate. I bet you they're pretty nice people. Best ongoing game. Final Fantasy 14, Fortnite, Helldivers 2, Marvel Rivals, and No Man's Sky. I would give it to Fortnite. I would give it to Fortnite like every year. Like that is clearly the best game in terms of ongoing support. They give you so much and so frequent and so gigantic updates so regularly, and they're so well polished and fun to go back to. Like I can't imagine people not saying that, but I understand why somebody would say like a No Man's Sky because it's been improved so much. I understand why somebody would say Helldivers 2, even though I think that game had a lot of stumbles in terms of its ongoing support. And then obviously Final Fantasy 14, I would also understand again because it was kind of a No Man's Sky story and turning it from something horrific to something really good. So, is what it is. I don't know anything about it because I don't play any of those games. So, nice. Or I do play a little bit of Fortnite, but most of those games I don't involve myself very heavily in. Games for Impact. Consume Me, Despelote, Lost Records Bloom and Rage, South of Midnight, and Wander Stop. I think this is probably going to Despelote or Consume Me. I'm going to lean towards Consume Me. I know that won a lot of awards outside of the Game Awards, and I've heard good things. I've played Despelote. I'm waiting to talk about it on the podcast. Really enjoyed it. But Lost Records Bloom and Rage sucks. South of Midnight, I think a lot of people were pretty mid on, and Wander Stop, a lot of people were pretty mid on as well. So I can't see any of those three winning. I think it's an easy takeaway for either Consume Me or Despelote. I'm rooting for Consume Me from what I've seen of it. Would love to play it, though, so we'll see. Innovation in accessibility. Again, also interested. These are normally always like, I would love to know how we define like, well, these guys made the most innovation in accessibility, because like Atomfall is on this list. I'm like, what the frick did Atomfall do? But like, I don't know anything about this. It's normally just these really high budget games that typically have the ability to invest in R&D for some kind of new accessibility feature. Like Assassin's Creed Shadows is the first one on this list. Atomfall, Doom, The Dark Ages, EA Sports FC 26, and South of Midnight. Who the frick knows? I will give it to Assassin's Creed Shadows because probably Ubisoft puts a lot of emphasis on that. Okay. Best Performance. I like these awards. Ben Starr, who has recently become just like a video game icon. He's really tried to get himself out there and become that in Clair Obscur. Charlie Cox in Clair Obscur. Erika Ishii from Ghost of Yote. Jennifer English, Clair Obscur. Konatsu Kato in Silent Hill F, and Troy Baker in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It's so crazy to see him be nominated, but it is a really good performance. Like, he really does sell you that, like, he is Harrison Ford, bro. It's a super awesome performance. Troy Baker definitely deserves some props for it, no doubt. But this is obviously going to go to Clair Obscur. I would probably give it to Ben Starr. He seems to be having a lot of push in terms of his, like, you know, everybody knows who he is, so you've already got that going for him. He's very marketed at this point, so people know to vote for him. Charlie Cox is not in the game for very long, but he is a very major part of that game, so I can see that happening. He's also like an actual Hollywood celebrity, so, but I would say it's likely going to go to Ben Starr. And then Jennifer English, who's one of the main characters in Clair Obscur as well. I think sounds cool, but Ben Starr is easily like the star of that game in my opinion, and I think it's definitely going to go to him. Best Audio Design, Battlefield 6, Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, Ghost of Yote, and Silent Hill F. Again, I would love to know how somebody judges these things. We're going to go with Clair Obscur because it had a good soundtrack, and I think that's just what people are going to vote on for it. Even though there's another category for that, which is Best Score in Music, Leveled Up by Spotify. That is the name of the category. I didn't just make that up. So Christopher Larkin for Hollow Knight Silksong, Darren Korb for Hades 2, Laurine Testard for Clair Obscur Expedition 33, Toma Ottawa for Ghost of Yote, and Woodkid and Ludwig Forsell for Death Stranding 2 on the Beach. It's an easy lock for Clair Obscur. It is a soundtrack I think everybody resonated with playing that game. Obviously going to win Game of the Year. It's a lock. Clair Obscur is going to win a lot of the awards that it's up for, I think. Best Art Direction, Clair Obscur 33, Expedition 33, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, Ghost of Yote, Hades 2, and Hollow Knight Silksong. In all honesty, this is a really tough one, but I think it's probably going to go to Clair Obscur just because everybody's voting for it because they love that game this year. But I think art direction for all of these games, really, really, really good. So it sucks that Clair Obscur I don't even think has the best art direction out of all of these games, but I do think it's going to win. So last three. Bear with me here. Best Narrative, Clair Obscur Expedition 33, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, Ghost of Yote, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and Silent Hill F. All of these games I've heard about having good narratives, except for Ghost of Yote. So very interesting. I heard a lot of people were not super cool on its narrative. I thought the narrative actually ended up being pretty good. But I know a lot of people thought it was too simplified to rote and standard. Very much going to immediately cross that off the list. Kingdom Come Deliverance is not very much known for its story. It's known for having great side quests. I don't think the main narrative itself is something people are too attracted to. Yoinks off the list. Silent Hill F was a game that I heard a lot of great things about the narrative, but I think it's a narrative that you have to replay it multiple times in order to get the true ending. Even though I think a lot of people enjoyed that narrative, I think it's a lot of people that people have to stomach it, and the game itself, like the gameplay, was not supposed to be very good. So I think that's going to be nixed. So you're down to two. Death Stranding 2 and Clair Obscur. Guess what's going to win? It's Clair Obscur, baby. I love the narrative. I'm still waiting to get around to Death Stranding 2. So many things on the backlog, it's hard to get around to it. But Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, I think is just too niche. I'm sure the narrative is great. Clair Obscur, I think, caught everybody. It caught everybody. It has a great narrative, great characters. It's got great twists and turns. Everybody loves that. I mean, it's gonna win. Sorry, it's gonna win. I love a great narrative category. I think we've been spoiled with great narratives this year, but again, it sucks to see Clair Obscur winning with all these other great games, because I want all these other great games to get recognition. But I think Clair Obscur has just grabbed the gaming community by the balls so much. It's exceeded everybody's expectations, has such a good narrative. There's no way really around it. And I think people are going to reward it for it. It's Clair Obscur's year, baby. It just sucks that nobody else gets to celebrate their year too, because I know a lot of games this year were super awesome. So, best game direction. Clair Obscur Expedition 33, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, Ghost of Yote, Hades 2, Split Fiction. I think all these games have great direction. All of them. Ghost of Yote, I think, is the least. Already going to knock that one off. Split Fiction's direction, so great. I don't think people respect its direction as much as I think they should. I think you really have to be blind to not realize that that game is so well paced and so well balanced and so fun from beginning to end. The direction is just impeccable. But I don't think that's what everybody's looking for when they say direction. They think a little bit more artsy. When they think direction. Hades 2 has great direction. Obviously, it kind of has popularized the roguelike genre in a way, exploded it even. Death Stranding 2, obviously, this is where we get crazy. Kojima, the paramount of game directors, going up against Clair Obscur, the pick, the fan favorite. Who wins? That's a really crazy thing. I think Clair Obscur is just going to win because it has more people voting for it. I think more people played Clair Obscur than Death Stranding 2 this year. It had a longer tail in terms of narrative. It's still, people are talking about it. Great narrative. Death Stranding 2, it's a little bit more avant-garde. It's a little bit more up its own butt, which, hey, still love it. But, I mean, like, major name behind it, Kojima. But I really think people are going to go and give it to Clair Obscur this year, which, speaking of, the big one, Game of the Year. Starting to get a little fatigued. I've been going for an hour 45, no breaks, so bear with me. Game of the Year. Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, Death Stranding 2, On the Beach, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Hades 2, Hollow Knight Silksong, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. When I look at this, the two that jump out to me specifically are Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Very early in the year, I don't see a lot of people talking about it outside of the people really sounding the alarm, like this is a really great game. And Donkey Kong Bonanza. The reason Donkey Kong Bonanza stands out to me as a Game of the Year nominee is it is not nominated for anything else outside of Best Family Game. All of these other games made nominations somewhere else on some really good category. And that tells me people really soured on Donkey Kong Bonanza. I think the game is good. It's easily going to be in my top 5 games this year. But I think people fell off on it. The narrative didn't really go very far or didn't stretch. There's no tail to Donkey Kong Bonanza's conversation, which is just so weird because it's their Nintendo's big game. Donkey Kong's big reveal, not reveal, but like his reboot, you could say. It's got a really interesting destruction mechanic that kind of cements everything together. I'm surprised. I'm surprised that the only thing it's nominated for is Game of the Year, and I think it's an easy lock to be immediately written off. It's not going to win. Same thing with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Heard great things, but I have only heard like Hollow Knight, Hades 2, Death Stranding 2, and Clair Obscur Expedition 33 are some of the best games ever made. So I don't think Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 comes close to that level of recognition to win Game of the Year. Hollow Knight Silksong, I think, is probably not going to pull it out. I think it was too much of a divisive conversation around the game's difficulty. I think it scared a lot of people off. And I think you have Clair Obscur with that more likable indie story where Team Cherry had this like, oh yeah, like we just took forever and delayed it forever because like we just felt like it. Our first game was so successful, we're kind of set for life and really don't need to do much else. It's like that's not as inspiring as like Clair Obscur's like, oh well, we were a bunch of developers that nobody believed in at Ubisoft and we left and like we made this game that people consider to be one of the best games of all time. Like that I think is a way more tangible narrative, right? Death Stranding 2 I think is too avant-garde. It's too up its own anus at times. It's too abrasive, I guess, to make it a like big contender for that. And then Hades 2, I think, because it had such a long development cycle within early access, it almost felt like it coming out at 1.0 was not like a huge moment. It was like, yeah, okay, 1.0. Yeah, I mean, we've been playing this game for like over a year already, so like I already kind of knew what it was, and it's good. Like it was good the whole time. Like that's kind of the vibe I got from people talking about Hades 2 for Game of the Year, and I think that really dampens it. This is such an obvious lock for Clair Obscur being Game of the Year. Obvious lock. It's got combat that everybody loves. It's got story and characters that everybody loves. It's got, I think, the defining thing, and I've hammered this a million times, the narrative is paramount. Paramount. It is paramount. The narrative is paramount here. It is something you really can't avoid when talking about this game. That like, oh yeah, these are the underdog developers that nobody believed in, and then they made this game that like just nobody could deny was the greatest game ever of all time. And like, look, I'm not even going to like fully deny that, but I do think the game gets a little overglazed. I do think like there are flaws with Clair Obscur. Like, I'm not here to say the game's bad, but like, I don't think anybody's even willing to have the conversation that there are flaws with the game. So like, I don't know. It always seems like it's a little overglazed in my opinion, but like, I still think the game is great. It's easily going to be the game of the year this year. And that's all the categories. Woof. Okay, that took me a lot longer than I thought it was going to take me. Dang. Game of the year, yet again, man. We are in it. And the Game Awards continue to be like a very hot button topic of conversation. People don't like how they're nominated. They don't like how things are, the categories or anything. It's a very, heavily marketed, very corporate entity. It's really a popularity contest. Let's be real. Let's break it down. This is a popularity contest. The Game Awards by Jeff Keighley is a popularity contest. If you want somebody to be nominated for actually putting in good development work, innovation, whatever the case is, respectful work, you're going to go to DICE. Go to the DICE Awards. Nobody watches the DICE Awards, though, because they don't reveal Elden Ring there. So, like, yes, I think, like, you could break it down, and I find it a very fascinating conversation. I'd love to get into it more when I'm not already an hour and 50 minutes, and I'm not even into impressions of the podcast. But it's what makes an award valid, what makes the Game Awards the awards everybody talks about. Well, it just has the most eyeballs on it. What makes the Oscars more noteworthy? What makes them more valid than like me saying, well, yeah, The Avengers is the best movie of the year, and this is why I think that is. Like, what makes that the case? And it's just, they've just established themselves as the de facto people. And like, it's like, well, the Oscars, I don't agree with them because they don't have the same taste as everybody else. Like, I think nobody cares about these movies because they're just up their own anus and they're all artsy and they're all these elitist picks. And it's like, well, yeah, that is what the Oscars are. That is what the Oscars are. And I think if hardcore gamers who really evaluated and delved deep into the mechanics of game design and what goes into game design and the passion, the heart, the thoughts behind it, and really delved deep into it in an intellectual and thought-provoking way, you would see these nominations be very, very, very different. They would be the Oscars, where nobody would know half of the games that are announced or that are nominated, and nobody would care. And the only reason people would care is because it had a lot of eyeballs and a lot of prestige, and that would be it. And that's kind of why people care about the DICE Awards. But like in this case, Jeff Keighley has just established himself as the de facto dude for all of these games, or for the gaming audience to look at. And that's because he has all those announcements. It's really an announcement show first and a game award show second. And I'm going to watch, and I'm going to have fun with it. And it is fun to kind of go back and forth and be like, oh, well, I thought this game was the best. No, I thought this game was the best. And, have that conversation. And this place, or, the Game Awards kind of really gives that place a place to start. And I think, yes, it's a popularity contest, but like, hey, dude, I think that's what most people want, to be quite honest. I think most people probably would be cool with a popularity contest, and I think we as hardcore gamers probably would want something a little bit more, but even hardcore gamers don't watch the freaking DICE Awards, so like, it is what it is. I think it's a really interesting conversation to have, but I'm way too deep into it at this point. But that is all for the news. Very happy to be done with the news segment. Did not expect to go on that long, but a fun segment nonetheless. All right. So on to impressions. So we have had a break. That was a long segment. So Been playing a lot of Ghost of Yotei over the past couple of weeks. It's been a long game. It's taken me a lot of time. Been very busy. So I said, I want to get some little games in. I got to get some easy one and dones out of the way. Just kind of feel good about myself. Like I'm completing something. I've knocked something off of my backlog for once. So I had acquired a few smaller titles that were very easy to kill. And I was like, okay, let's just go ahead and do that. So we're going to go. And we're going to talk about them briefly because most of them are pretty brief. Speaking of brief, the first one is Pepper Grinder. Pepper Grinder. So I am the platforming king, as I have many times stated. Pepper Grinder is a platformer from Devolver Digital, of all people. A very funky, not funky, but charming. Has a great little pixel art vibe to it. You are playing as Pepper, and you have a drill. And so you have levels where you can drill into terrain, and you are kind of automatically forced to go forward through those dirt piles or whatever it is. And then once you get to the end or the edge of a dirt pile, you pop out of it. So you're kind of using that momentum and having to think on your feet and move quickly through these dirt piles to really kind of advance in this platforming. It's a fun idea, and, you know, it feels good. The levels are varied. The bosses are fun. Even though I did have some difficulty with, like, the first boss, but, like, the rest of the bosses I actually, you know, felt were challenging but fun. So, you know, movement as a whole has mastery to it. Levels are always challenging and changing things up and designed very regularly. So you're saying, Henry, why have I never heard of this game? Why, or maybe I have heard of this game. Why did reviews say it's not very good? And why are you already trailing off on what you're talking about here? Well, because I've already told you everything in the game. It is maybe 3 hours long. It took me about 2.5 hours to actually get to the end. And it is about 3 hours long. If you wanted to 100% it, you could maybe do that in 4 hours. If you kind of knew what you were doing, knew what you were looking for. It's short. And, you know, I paid like $5 for this game. And so, like, I'm pretty happy with it. I like platformers. And I think there's enough spit and polish and charm here that, like, it's kind of worth the money that I put into it. And I definitely don't mind a game being shorter, but, like, 2.5 to 3 hours, at that point, I think you have more of a tech demo. Like, this is more of a demo for a game that should have been 8 hours, you know, 6 to 8 hours, something like that. And I think that's what a lot of people kind of felt like in reviews is like, look, like I can see where this game could have been really great, but like I don't think it ever has the time to do that. So Pepper Grinder is a cool idea, but it really is weird that they didn't make more levels for it, that they didn't have more worlds. There are 4 worlds, and each world has like 5 levels and then like 1 optional one that you can unlock. It really does seem like they didn't finish the game, or like they felt like they ran out of ideas after just starting to have developed it. It really is sad, and I think this is a game that deserved more in more ways than one. So I can't say I hate Pepper Grinder. It's a good game. It's just like way too short, and I don't often say that about games. In fact, I'm going to say the exact opposite about a game later on this list. But moving on to the next game, that's probably one of the quickest recap. I really tried to stretch that out too. That's just how little there is to say about the game. It's really unfortunate. Next, Death Come True. Death Come True is Kodaka-san's first foray into games after leaving Spike Chunsoft. He started Tukio Games. If you don't know Kodaka, he is the creator of Danganronpa. That is his claim to fame. He's really struggled with trying to find anything else of note that people are latching on to in any real way. 100 Line Defense Academy came out this year. I don't know how successful it was. It reviewed very well, though. And then, of course, Rain Detective, I played earlier this year, actually, and I was even let down by. So, like, it's all of his games are fine. They're just, like, nothing's easily reaching that peak of Danganronpa success. But after having made Danganronpa 1 through 3, he said, look, I am the guy who made Danganronpa. Okay, everybody thinks I'm pretty frickin' cool. I'm going to make my own studio, which I think is now really suffering because they had like a free-to-play game that did not do well at all. They put a lot of money into it and like nobody played it. It's shutting down. It may actually be shut down. It's like shutting down in a couple of days. It's actually pretty close to the end of its life cycle. But anyway, he went on, made his own studio, and his first game that he made was Death Come True, which is a narrative, choice-based live action game, which is really just a movie, to be frank. Like, it is a movie, and the reason I say that is it is live action, real actors. It's not like a text-based, you're advancing one prompt at a time. You are watching, like, a cutscene, which is shot like a film. And not only that, but this game is 2 hours long. Like, you cannot extend the runtime any further than that, even if you wanted to. I went back and I even tried to unlock some extra choices because there's trophies attached to doing other choices, and I still put in 2 hours into this game. So, like, it's really short. It's basically him trying to make a movie, and the only way he really, I guess, either knew how or could get the backing to do that was if he stuck to making a video game. And so that's kind of where Death Come True comes from. Now, I picked this up because it was, one, super cheap, and two, which it should be with a 2-hour runtime, and two, is the premise really intrigued me. So the story is actually a man wakes up in a hotel room and he has amnesia, and he turns on the TV and he finds out that he is a serial killer, and he can't remember anything. So he has amnesia. He finds out he's a serial killer, and he goes into the bathroom and he finds a woman tied up unconscious in the bathtub. And over the course of time, like, the police come in and he gets shot, he dies, and he resets time, and he realizes that, like, he keeps his memory and he's able to relive the same events again and again every time he dies. So that's a pretty cool premise, in my personal opinion. So as I got into it, it's very your usual Kodaka, flair. It has many twists and turns that keep the story moving. But the difference here is that normally Kodaka's working on like a visual novel time frame in which pacing has to be done differently because you are working with like 40 hours of runway. Most visual novels are typically around that time, at least the ones that I've played. And this is 2 hours. So he has a lot of twists and turns in here, and what that leads to is like a lot of the twists, major twists, are just like dropped on you. It's just like they just happen. Like, literally, I remember like early on in the game, it's like, what's happening? I don't know. This is so weird. And then like a character comes out and is like, well, I'll tell you exactly why all of this is happening. And it's like, what? And they just like totally blow the gasket off of like everything but you've only been playing the game for like 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh, well, we really didn't like steep into this mystery very far before you just told me the answer to it. So it doesn't make it very mysterious. But that's kind of what we're dealing with here. I found some fun in the twists. I enjoyed them. I thought the ideas were fun. And not only that, but there are some like meta elements that he kind of messes with in choice-based narrative games that I got a kick out of. And, that's kind of what I'm looking for from this guy, which is great. Here's the catch. This is a movie, but it is not a very good one. The acting is subpar. The writing is not great, which like is normal for Kodaka. Okay, like let's be real. Nobody is going to a Kodaka game because they're like, oh, well, I really love the deep intellectual prose. No. They're going there because of, like, the narrative twists, like, and the concepts, deep concept levels. Like, that's kind of what you're really getting from a Kodaka game. But that's, not really here. You then have cinematography that's boring, so really stale shots and really stale locations. So this was shot in like 3 different areas. So like one's the hotel you're in, one's like a warehouse area, and one's like a hallway. And so it's like very boring locales, very samey. You just see them over and over. You replay the same scenes over and over and over again. And it makes the game pretty stale pretty quick. And it made me bored. Like, I got bored. Normally I get bored in visual novels because I'm like, reading kind of puts me to sleep. But in this instance, it was not reading that put me to sleep. It was just the bad cinematography and like poor acting and writing that did that, which is very sad. So, this was clearly Kodaka's attempt to be a Kojima. He wanted, like, Kojima has obviously tried to expand into film, like he's working with Hollywood actors, all that good stuff. Kodaka is obviously somebody who wanted to kind of give his attempt at that as well. He wanted to be a movie maker, and this did not work out. It is a 75 on Metacritic, so a lot of people kind of felt similarly to me. I think for what it is, it's a fun experience. If you're a fan of his previous works, if you really like Danganronpa or Rain Code or, like anything like that, I think Death Comes True, you're going to probably find something here that you enjoy. You're going to get something out of it. But I think most everyone else that isn't really into this guy's style, I think you're just going to kind of wonder why you didn't watch a better movie. Like, why didn't I just open up Netflix, just watch a new hot film at the time or something like that, and you'll probably get more enjoyment out of it. So, like I said, I didn't mind it, and I got it at a steal, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But, it is interesting watching this guy develop as a developer in general, making this really big cult following, massive success game, and then really struggling to go out on his own and try to differentiate himself as something other than that. And he's really having issues to doing that. And it's hard to see because I really think he can make something really cool, and I really love Danganronpa, but like, I really am struggling to see him doing much else that's getting close to that level of success. And I'm interested to see if he can do it. But anyway, our final game, that's right, final game, we're like, 10 minutes into impressions, and we're already pretty much at the end of it. This one's a little bit more, I have more to say about this, but our final game is Arctic Awakening. Arctic Awakening, the developers sent me a code for this game. Really appreciate it. I have reviewed, this will be the 3rd game I've reviewed now that a developer has sent me a code for. Always so grateful. Truly, 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 truly grateful. When anybody sees me as deems me worthy enough to send me a code, acknowledges my existence. That's always great. But my first game I reviewed was Ruffian the Riverside, that I got a code for. And I thought that game had flaws, but I overall enjoyed it. And I was very honest with my opinion. The second game was the Pixel Junk developers' new game, Dreams of Another. It took me a second to remember that one. I did not enjoy my time with that one, but I tried really hard to pull punches and be honest while also not completely tearing the game apart, because Dreams of Another is a game where I'm like, well, this game really isn't for me. It's a very artsy game. So it's possible somebody could enjoy Dreams of Another. Maybe not me, but I can see somebody else really enjoying it. Maybe somebody who really wants to delve into, philosophical musings or, have a trippy experience or something like that. That's not really what I'm looking for, but maybe somebody else is, so I'm not really going to dig down too hard on that. Arctic Awakening is an indie narrative choice-based game, which is right up my alley. I love games like that. It's a Firewalk-inspired game, very clearly. I think Firewalk has some issues. I don't love where the narrative goes with Firewalk. I think it ends up kind of being kind of boring. But I think Firewalk overall is a great game. And I was like, okay, this looks like a great game. I'd love to have a code for this. And they were like, absolutely, here's a code. This is a game I think it's going to be a lot harder for me to pull my punches on because, one, I'm very familiar with this genre. I typically enjoy games like this. And two, is I think this game is frustratingly flawed. It's really hard for me to look at these flaws and be like, dang, this game could have been way better than it is. And I feel like it was so easy for them to have fixed a lot of the issues that were plaguing this game, if that makes sense. So I'm going to get into it, but to start off, it's an indie narrative, choice-based, quote-quote, survival game, walking sim. There's a lot there, but all of it kind of makes sense. It has elements of those things. It focuses on a pilot who crash lands in the Arctic tundra, and his only companion is a court-mandated emotional support robot, and he has to quickly find out how to survive and realizes that the area around him is steeped in mystery. There's all sorts of crazy machines and, mysterious equipment that who knows what's going on here. He must uncover the secrets deep within the conspiracy. So I enjoyed the premise. I thought it really lended itself to maybe a deep character study, where we have an emotional support robot. Why does this guy have an emotional support robot? What's wrong with this guy? Can we kind of delve into it, and using this robot as kind of a bouncing off point, we can really have a deep character study on this guy. And then the mystery itself and like the Arctic setting was interesting. It was different. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of into this. I'd really love to see where this goes. The premise is great. And it has something that could be really cool. But let's delve into it. So in terms of gameplay, it has some ham-fisted survival mechanics. So I put survival in quotations at the beginning of my description here because you have two things. It's mental and hunger meters. Really the only thing your hunger meter does is if the hunger meter goes down, it makes your mental meter go down. And if your mental meter goes down all the way, you don't die or anything like that. The only thing that really happens is your vision gets really blurry and your movement speed gets decreased, which in my notes I have in all caps is a killer. And I think I have softened on this game since writing my notes, but when I wrote my notes, I was hot off of this game and I was like, oh, I am not having it. like I was really frustrated with it. This is, mainly because the problem with this is the movement speed is already really slow. It's already really slow, even when you're sprinting, and you do a massive amount of walking in this game. The game forces you to trek through really open areas, long stretches of ground, and a lot of talking, and sometimes not a lot of talking, but sometimes a lot of talking that doesn't seem to really go in a lot of directions, which is the biggest flaw. It translates into the biggest flaw of the game, which is its pacing. Long stretches of tundra and paths go on for way too long, and you have occasional dialogue that fills in, but never really amounts to much. It never builds into anything particularly worth the investment. So this character study that I assumed was an obvious, setup for this game, it gets drip fed to you. Like they don't ever really explore what seemed like an obvious kind of point, and it all gets kind of dumped down you right at the end of the game, which again just feels oddly paced. And like, why are we just now getting into this very obvious plot point and very obvious explanation so deep into the game? It just seems. It seems very fumbled, I suppose. The mystery itself is kind of another issue. So I genuinely wanted to learn what was going on. I actually, there were times in this game where I was so frustrated with the padding that I was like, oh man, I really want to put this game down. But then I was like, oh, well, in all honesty, maybe there's a cool reveal coming in the next chapter. Or, that ending of that chapter was actually kind of led me to believe something cool is happening or something cool is going on, or really this mystery could be interesting. I'll press on just a little bit more. I'll see what I can get out of it. And, like, the narrative is not necessarily bad. Okay. I won't say that. But the game's narrative kind of all gets dropped on you at the very final chapter. And it, again, is one of those things that makes me, like, just bang my head against the wall. Like, why did we pad this game so much? Why is there so much padding in terms of dialogue? Why is there so much padding in terms of traversal? Like, in walking around, why is there so much padding when this game just feels like it's pretty content just kind of dropping all the answers, or at least all the main, most interesting story beats on you at the very end? And again, like, it's frustrating because I don't think this game's story is bad. It's just poorly constructing. It's frustrating because I don't think this game's characters are bad. I just think they're poorly executed. It's frustrating because I don't think the traversal is necessarily bad, because you're still getting decent dialogue. You're still getting to explore these Arctic tundra environments, which I think is a unique environment choice for a video game. You don't get to see very much. It is pretty and interesting to explore. But, like, why did we not execute on that, like, in a better way? And this game is about 8 hours long, and you're like, Henry, 8 hours is kind of a sweet spot for most indie games, and I probably would assume that this developer probably thought something along those lines, is like, well, yeah, we could make this game a 3-hour game, but that would really devalue the game. Like, I think a lot of people, if we charged $20 for this game, or whatever the original price was, would look at it and say, oh, well, it's only 3 hours. I don't want to pay $15-20 for that and move on. But if we make it 8 hours, it makes it more worth the player's time and therefore their money. And so we really need to make sure that this game is, like, probably like 8 to 10 hours long. That's kind of what most players are looking for when they look at an indie game. And I would agree with that. But gosh darn, I think the length of this game is the biggest issue. If this game had been half the length, I honestly think this game could have been 3 hours, and you could have gotten the same narrative beats, the same character moments. You could have gotten all of it within 3 hours. And I think half the length is probably what this game should have been. And why couldn't it have been? Because the issues that could have fixed this, I can easily point to, are one of two things. You give me a faster sprint speed, my sprint speed being faster, and the long tundras that I walk through being shortened. And both of these things are very easy to fix. Obviously the sprint is like you just turn up the notch, and obviously the long areas is easy to fix because you don't have to develop so much of the freaking game. You save on time and effort in development. So just don't make the passageways as long. Don't elongate them as much, and you save on time. You're saying, I can see the developer pushing back and being like, but hey, our vision was we wanted you to really be immersed in these environments. We wanted you to get to look around and see all these, great Arctic tundra settings. And that's kind of what that was like a huge part of what we wanted the player to get from this. And in my personal opinion, I don't know how turning up the sprint speed takes away from that. I would still see the exact same amount of tundra. I would still see the same areas. I'm going through it much faster. And the issue with that is like, well, then you won't be, hearing as much of the dialogue, we have, those areas be as long so that the dialogue can fit within the walk. And it's like, okay, well, a lot of the walk is tending to be pretty empty, and when it's not, I feel like the writing is not serving much of a purpose. It's not going anywhere. It's not doing anything. It seems to be padding more so than anything else. And if you cannot make the dialogue you're writing serve the grander purpose in some way, shape, or form, then I think it shouldn't be there in the first place. So it's very frustrating to see like both of these things could have been fixed easily. They could have been immensely tuned and fixed, and it would have made this game so much better. And, you know, this game has decent voice acting. I looked at reviews, and, you know, like, people had typically the same comments. A lot of people did actually dog the voice acting. I actually think the voice acting is fine. I actually know some of the voice actors. I've heard them in other projects before. It's typically like your B grade voice actors. And really, I mean, depending on who you ask, some of them could probably be considered like maybe C to D grade, but they're talented enough to get a gig, and it makes sense. Like, I think they're fine voice actors. They're no problem. In all honesty, they sell the characters well enough for what they are. I think a lot of people said the score is very good, and I think the music is a very good part of this game. It's very haunting, very, like, rustic in a way. Like, it really does fit the vibe. So I do think the score is very good. And I appreciate the story for what it is and the environment. I think, like I've said multiple times, the environment is something you don't get to see very much in mini games. And I think the story does actually have some interesting beats in it. It's just not paced very well. But like, this pacing ends up making the game an overall disappointment. And, like, this game easily could have been a 7, a 7.5. I think a lot of people were dogging the game for technical issues. I didn't have many, if any. Well, I did have some. Towards the end of the game, I started seeing a lot more technical issues. But most of the issues within the first half to, honestly, like, maybe 2/3 of the game, I didn't see. And that was something the developers even notified me of when they sent me a code, was like, we are aware of technical issues within certain sections of the game. Here's how to avoid them. Or, like, we're working on a fix, so just heads up, like, don't ding us. But, like, some people in reviews were really digging into those technical issues. Apparently it really affected their experience. I'll say that I had very few of those issues, and none of them were particularly game ruining for me. But I think a lot of this game is like in the 60s right now, which I think is probably fair. In all honesty, I would love to give this game like a 7.5. I think if everything that if the main issues I've been harping on were fixed, this easily could have been a 7.5 game. It could have been something that I would have said, well, if you're really looking for something in this setting, if you want a good Arctic winter wonderland kind of vibe, and you want an interesting mystery, walking simulator game. I mean, there's plenty of people out there who enjoy walking simulators. I'm one of them. I'd say, yeah, sure. Like, this game definitely has something that you may be interested in, and, is worth checking out at the price. Maybe on a discount, check it out. And, I think I'd be pretty comfortable doing that. At this point, I'd say there's so many other walking sim games out there, and, like, I would genuinely recommend, if you are, I don't say this, again, that freaking sounds really bad because they provided me a code, so I really don't like saying this, but, like, I think it is probably better if you watched this game on YouTube and you fast forwarded through a lot of the walking. I think that would make this game far more enjoyable and would make it that 7 out of 10, 7.5 out of 10 experience that would be maybe not for everybody, but would be for that audience that typically looks for these kind of experiences. And at this point, it's hard for me to even recommend that. I'd say if you are a devout walking simulator fan and you truly are intrigued by the premise and you've heard me speak on it and you say, yeah, sure, that sounds fine still, I'm okay with that, I'd say definitely check it out. If not, the pacing needs to be addressed. It's probably the worst paced walking simulator game I've ever played, that I've at least finished. And I think I take that back. I think it is not the worst walking simulator game I've ever played, but the pacing frustrates me so. It frustrates me so. Because I do see, I was like, dang, I really can see myself probably having had a good time with this game if it wasn't for the pacing. And it really disappoints me. And, I really think that this is something that could be improved easily with another iteration, with another game that maybe the developers are working on in the future, and I would love to see what they're working on in the future and if they can fix those issues, because if so, I think they would be a fine, walking simulator studio that would pump out games that I think walking simulator fans would be interested in and have a good time with. And at the moment, I just don't see that with Arctic Awakening. I do appreciate the code. I really do hope that maybe somebody out there heard me talk about this game and said maybe. I think it's hard when I'm so vitriolic and I'm so frustrated with it. But again, it's a frustration. It's a frustration that comes from wanting this game to be good and seeing that this game can be good. It's not a frustration saying that this game is all bad. And I think I do want to distinguish that. So that is my take on Arctic Awakening and the end of our episode. So this has been a long one, 2.5 hours. Wow, and you're still around. I'm so flattered. Thank you. I hope it was a good episode for you. A lot of reading lists. I know that's not always the fun part. I probably could have had a better deep dive into the Steam, the new Valve hardware, Steam machine, but I was honestly pretty exasperated by the time I got to that story. So it was hard for me to really have a great handle on it. And like I said, it's just it's hard for me to see a use case for it for a broad audience at all. It's a very specific person who's going to want a Steam machine. But anyway, I mean, we talked about that way in the beginning of the episode, or way in the middle of the episode, a freaking hour and a half ago. But anyway, I want to thank you for sticking around this far. Friend, can I call you friend? Can we be friends? I would love to be your friend. But it does mean a lot. And I say that at the end of every episode, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for sticking around. Thank you so much for listening, for being a friend. Please drop a comment. Let's have a conversation. I'd love to talk. I'd love to talk about video games. Clearly, hello. Literally did it for 2.5 hours and put it on the internet for people to hear me say, so kind of makes sense. But I hope you have or had a good Thanksgiving. Depending on when you're listening to this, I hope you traveled safe. I hope you had some good food, good villains, some would say. I would not normally say that, but I did today for you, the viewing audience. And I hope you play some good video games. I probably won't be playing some good video games. I will be very busy over the coming days. Had to record this episode a little bit earlier than I would have wanted, mainly because I got so much going on with Thanksgiving. And December, holy frick, obviously going to be a massive, massive cluster as well. I mean, as it always is. I always think, oh yeah, well, I think I'll have at least a couple of weeks in December where I won't have anything going on. And then, of course, definitely not the case. So we'll see. But I hope you do get to play some video games. I hope you get some good video games. Maybe Black Friday. Hey, man, get some good discounts. I'm looking for a new laptop. Mine's 6 years old, so it's just time. The old gal, she's giving me a good run, but her time's come to an end. So I'm looking for a good one of those, and then hopefully some good game discounts. Really, Black Friday's kind of been disappointing. I've been looking at the sales. It has not been crazy. But anyway, I hope you have better luck. That's you could probably do a whole episode about Black Friday, but I'm not going to do that. I am going to leave you alone at 2.5 hours of runtime. So thank you, sir, and or madam, and it's a progressive time we live in. And I will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.